Hey y'all, it's Rick here with Uncommon Communion. Yes, I am recording another video in place of my Tuesday post, which would typically be the music post. And this is intentional in part. The evening did get late, but I really wanted to share with you this afternoon after I watched something and some thoughts were kind of coming together. I'm glad I waited though, because I want to share a little bit differently now than I would have earlier. Before I share that, let's begin as we always begin by recognizing, realizing, celebrating, and affirming that we are always and everywhere in the holy presence of the more and each other. So, before I get started with what I wanted to share earlier today, I want to just preface this with the reminder that everything Trump is doing right now, and the two big headlines have been DC and Zelensky and Putin and Alaska, all of this is designed, number one, to push boundaries to see how far he can go. And number two, and most importantly, is to distract from the release of the Trump Epstein Maxwell files. And we need to be clear on this, y'all, that we have to continue to keep pushing for that. Not just the American people, but the world deserves to know which of the leading citizens, read white, rich, excessively rich men, were the patrons who were raping, and I use that word, girls. We need to know. I'm going to let Aaron Parnas say it better than I could and tell you a little bit about where we are with things. I'm not going to echo that. I'm going to put a link to it in the notes and encourage you to watch it, share it, and remember, y'all. And mark this date on your calendar, and let's continue to beat the drum on this. September 3rd, 2 weeks from the day after tomorrow, Tuesday, it's 3 weeks from Wednesday, is the day that two representatives, Massey of Kentucky, Republican, and Khanna of California, Democrat, are bringing victims of Epstein Maxwell to Capitol Hill for a press conference to, again, push their colleagues to release the Epstein Trump Maxwell files. All right. Watch Aaron Parnas. He will fill you in. He is the man on this. What I wanted to share with you today was something I've been thinking about since the graduation of my oldest kiddo, more than a week. It was a week ago this past Saturday. And I shared with you that she graduated from Kent State. And I shared with you a little bit about the president of Kent giving the address at the convocation, the graduation. And one of the things that I was thinking about is this. You know, Kent State is famous around the world. I would say infamous, perhaps, for the massacre of the four students who were killed there by National Guard troops on May 4th, 1970. Now, I could be wrong on the year, but I'm pretty sure it was 1970. I know it was May 4th, believe it or not, y'all, as we are all busy, celebrating Star Wars Day and all of that. The people in Kent and the people who are relatives, family members, people who are friends of those young people whose lives were taken by bullets fired by National Guard troops, right? So, I thought, what must that be like to be the president of a university that is a great university? We are so glad that our daughter went there. She is actually continuing her master's degree through Kent State. It's a cool little town. It's a beautiful little campus. It is a really good place. And it will forever, forever, ever, ever be known as a horrific massacre, you know? And I'll share some photos of it. I believe I took some, and I'll share those in my next written post that will be, for Wednesday. So I'll share that with you because I think seeing how they have remembered this is a testimony to the importance and how the significance of that day. So, National Guard troops, we have them loitering, it seems, in Washington, D.C. We have troops from other states, my own state of Ohio, governor, it's a red state, the governor's sending National Guard troops there, right? Hundreds of miles away from their families to do what, right? To do what? And what they are doing is something that I think we miss. And by we, I mean, the 50+% of Americans, really probably about 70% of Americans who are not hooked into the MAGA media, the MAGA mindset, the cult of personality that T. Rump commands, and really the degradation of what not all, but many of those folks are looking at in their content, in their feeds, their algorithm driven feeds. I'm going to put the link to another article today that I highly recommend you read. It is about the way that these videos of this that the White House and Department of Homeland Security and others are putting out what they are designed to do and how they are influencing and shifting perceptions and perspectives in a target audience, right? So I'll encourage you to read that as well. All of this was on my mind because of Andor. And I am going to do a little bit of spoiling here. Again, I encourage you to watch the whole series. It is amazing. I have 4 episodes left. One of the cool things about watching the series is, and I might have mentioned this, they're doing it intentionally in 3 episode arcs, kind of like a little movie, 40 minutes ish of each. And in 3 episodes, you really have a contained story that, the next story flows from and so forth. But what I was watching today, and again, I'm not going to go into super detail, but it was a massacre by a military fascist buildup. And it was hard to watch, because it's a reminder of what can happen in a fascist regime when there's a lot of weapons and there's intentionality to provoke. All right. Again, I'm not going to say much more than that because I don't want to spoil it too much. But it just watching this brought to mind the horror of what it is like when a government opens fire on its citizens. And that happens to, huge effect in this episode of Andor, episode 8 of the second season. And again, y'all, it is, I, I struggle with something that is called a failure of imagination, right? And I'll be honest, I never thought that T. Rump could get elected in the first place. I couldn't imagine that. But guess what? He did. I couldn't imagine that he would weasel out of both, especially the second after January 6th, impeachments, but he did. I couldn't imagine that he would win the second term, but he did, right? And there's so many things still that I think we can't imagine, right? Like National Guard troops opening fire on citizens. Well, it happened once in this country, and it could very easily happen again. And we need, I think, things like the episode in Andor to remind us that these things can happen, to give us an image, to help us imagine what could happen. And y'all, it could happen. Again, it's happened once already, and to kind of loop back to the Kent State president, um, what is the next university or the next location that may be the site that has to remember the death of students or the death of people on American soil, right? Whether they're citizens or not, doesn't matter. On American soil, we have rights. And one of the rights is if we are behaving in a way that is responsible, where we are not being violent or threatening, we we don't get shot. We don't get killed, right? By our government representatives, agents, etc. So I know this was a little bit heavy, y'all, and it's kind of hard to say late at night, but I wanted to get this out, and I want to just encourage you to continue to pay attention, continue to share, continue to point out what is going on, because y'all, this is important. And a solution to this, and again, it's not a silver bullet, it's not a magic bullet, but if and when the Epstein, Trump, Maxwell files come out, everything changes, right? Everything changes. Now, where it goes and what happens, it's completely unpredictable. It's hard to imagine. But if and when the corruption at the level that is in those files, if and when that is exposed, everything collapses as far as the facade and the illusion and the fascism that is rising. So that's why we got to push for this, y'all. We got a lot of other work to do, right? But that is one thing we have to push, because ultimately, and I am remiss that I didn't say this earlier, it is about justice for the victims, the hundreds, if not thousand girls, now women, but then girls whose lives were ripped from them because of the privilege and the wealth and the evil of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and very likely many other names that we would recognize. So let's end, as we often end, with the serenity prayer. God grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thy will, not ours, be done. All right, y'all. Please read what I'm going to post, and I will see you again soon. Blessing and good. Be gentle. Be well.